morning. Welcome to the worship service of the First Unitarian Church of Hobart, where we strive to put love at the center of how we show up in the world. So each week during our Sunday morning worship service, we join together in affirming that love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament. Service is its prayer, and this is our covenant. To dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Since not everyone can attend in person, we are streaming this worship service online, and we extend a special welcome to all who are joining us virtually. The joys and sorrows portion of our service, however, is private, and we will temporarily pause the stream for that. Other than that, the worship service is being recorded and will be available for future viewing on our website. This morning, our minister, Reverend Tom Bozeman, will be preaching the sermon, so please turn off or silence your devices, and as you do so, allow yourself to enter the sacred time together and take a breath. And another. And join us in the spirit of reverence. Our first reading is by Adrian Rich. My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I have to cast my lot with those who, age after age, perversely, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. Flaming chalice is a symbol of the Unitarian Universalism. It suggests the transformation that takes place when we are held within religious community. When we light the chalice in worship, we illuminate a world that we feel called upon to serve with love and a sense of justice. Please join us in lighting our chalice by reading together the words on the screen in the order of your service. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together.
So we are a community, a tradition that comes together not around creed, but around covenant, around the agreements that we make with one another and as a larger community. Covenants that we come to through agreement, through democracy. And so I would invite you to join in our recovenanting process. Each week we take a section of our covenant and come back to a few lines of it and repeat together, may we forgive ourselves and each other and begin again in love. So for all the ways that we have neglected to expand our spiritual growth and faith in action, may we forgive ourselves and each other and begin again in love. For all the ways that we have not committed our hearts and minds to building a community of caring, acceptance, and reconciliation, may we forgive ourselves and each other and begin again in love. For all the ways that we have not actively worked to build trust and respect in our community, may we forgive ourselves and each other and begin again in love. And so having recovenanted, I'd invite you to just look around the space at these beautiful souls that we are sharing some time and space with, some faces that are maybe friendly, maybe some strange, maybe wave, greet them in some fashion. The folks who are online joining us over YouTube or Zoom. And then I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn 407. We're going to sit at the welcome table. Please be seated. So the opportunity to share with each other, to offer up what is going on in our hearts, souls, our minds, the things that we have been carrying is a key part of sitting at the welcome table together. And so I would invite folks to share the joys and sorrows that we've been carrying within out loud if you feel so moved. And I'll come around the room with this microphone, and I would just ask that you share your name with us so that we know who you are. Joys or sorrows, yes. Gratitude for all that has been shared and all that lives on in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. May we continue to weave the fabric of this community into ever more beautiful patterns. I invite you now to rise in body or spirit and join in singing the doxology. Please be seated.
I'm going to ask the congregation to help us with this story. No, we're doing the reading. Okay. Sorry. I invite you now to open a gray hymnal and join me in reading aloud responsive reading number 470 in the back of the hymnals. I will read the regular text and invite you to join me in reading the italicized text, which is also here on the screen. We affirm the unfailing renewal of life, rising from the earth and reaching for the sun. All living creatures shall fulfill themselves. We affirm the steady growth of human companionship, rising from the ancient cradles and reaching for the stars. People the world over shall seek the ways of understanding. We affirm a continuing hope. Tragedy, the spirits of individuals shall rise to build a better world.
So we'll get to the story in just a moment, but first some brief discussion with one another. So as we've talked about in the series so far, on the surface of things, there's a lot about, I don't know if you've recognized this or heard about this, but this year there's a big thing called an election going on. You might have heard about it on the news, on the internet, or somewhere. At one level, there's politics that we get bombarded with or seek out if we're really into politics. And there's lots of really important issues that are raised. It's important to take action in some way. But under the surface of those political questions and issues are usually some kind of deeper theological questions. And so this series is digging into some of our UU answers to those deeper theological questions. In the words of one UU religious educator, Lila Ibrahim, the UU sensibility that we bring to it is that it's a blessing each of us was born. It matters what we do with our lives. What each of us knows about God is a piece of the truth, and we don't have to do it alone. Over the course of my time as a professional activist, I realized that while I had become really familiar with politics, what was missing for me was religion. As blogger Sarah Robinson wrote, while politics is all about how we're going to make the world better, progressive religion tells us why it's necessary to work for change. We offer the essential metaphors and worldview that everything else derives from, the frames that give our dreams shape and meaning. And this is essential because all around us are frameworks that put at risk the global community of humanity and the many diverse people who live on this earth, or the ecological systems of which we're a part. The framework makes all the difference. If we're given one kind of framework, then we read the story of Adam and Eve being placed in the Garden of Eden as one of humans being placed at the center of everything with the authority to rule over it all. And if we're given another kind of framework, then we read the exact same story as one of humans being placed among many other beings, their older siblings, with the responsibility to take care of and to be in relationship with them all. The framework makes all the difference. And we Unitarian Universalists don't have to start from scratch. We are the inheritors of what John Burns and Rebecca Parker describe as a communal theological house, built by those who lived, labored, and loved before us. Our social justice hopes have their origins in the ethical teachings of our own religious tradition. They are the same ethical teachings that gave rise to the movement for abolition and women's rights in the 18th and 19th centuries, the Christian social gospel of the late 19th century that inspired the progressive era of the 20th century, the civil rights movement of the 20th century, the Roe v. Wade case that made it to the Supreme Court because of the activism of liberal church women. Ultimately, much of this comes back to what we hope for and how we hope for it. And so in the first week of this series, we explored the ultimate ends that we're aiming towards. In the second week, we talked about our approach to being in community with one another. In the third week, we talked a little bit about that spicy sin and salvation topic. In the fourth week, last week, we got into the heart of theology, our sense of God and what that means. This week, we're going to get into our sense of what it is to be human. And so we'll be wrestling with a few questions, one of which is, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to live in right relationship with the divine? And what does it mean to love and be loved? And so we'll have a few moments to just consider those questions silently to ourselves. They're printed out in your order of service, and they're up on the screen as well. And so you have a couple moments to think about that silently yourself, and then once we've done that for a few moments while Jeremy plays, then I will invite you to discuss very briefly with each other kind of where your mind went. And so feel free to pick whichever one of these speaks to you the most, whichever one you find the most interesting, to just consider for a few moments in silence. Given them some thoughts, I would invite you to turn to one person sitting next to you, two at the absolute most. We'll have just 2 minutes, to share between the two of you what came up for you, what did you think in your head, what did you feel in your heart. I'll let you know when the time is up. Okay, thank you for giving that some thought and conferring in a very brief, limited way with one another about whatever it is that came up, that you considered, that you thought about, that was in your mind or heart. And so I'm curious to hear from a couple folks. What did you hear yourself saying or hear somebody else saying? I see a teacher in the room has raised her hand.
I love your discussions, but hi, guys. So here we go. Are you guys ready? All right. My name is Heather Oakes. I go by Oakes. What does it mean to be human? I was just up at the Field Museum a couple weeks ago listening to some people talk. The difference between Australopithecines, I'm a science teacher, and us, why are Homo sapiens sapiens not Australopithecines? Why did we evolve? And the answer is to communicate and share, transfer ideas, and build upon others' ideas. So there you go. Maggie, are you ready? The answer is to communicate and share, transfer ideas, and build upon others' ideas.
Thank you, Heather. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. I love when people have written down notes too. That makes it especially helpful. Other folks. Yes.
We live in Merrillville. Our next door neighbor is Haitian. And our relationship started out kind of difficult because he was, I don't know, did not fit in with the community. So the doorbell rang about 2 weeks ago, and Brian went to the door, and there was this Haitian sitting on our stoop. And Brian said, may I help you? And the man turned around, and it was our next door neighbor, and he said, I just wanted to see how you were because you haven't been out and about a lot because of my being on, the walker and so forth. So it's just very nice that he reached out to us.
Yeah, even when somebody isn't, the closest of friends, still reaching out and checking on each other.
And I have one other version. I did see him eat a hot dog once.
We all have a little bit of humanity in our hot dog eating. Joey, did you raise your hand?
I was just going to push back on that definition a little bit, because I see all sorts of animals communicate, even plants communicate and share nutrients with each other, and I don't know if that's the distinction, and maybe it's not even that important to define what a human is when we ourselves rely on so many other animals and life forms, but I'm not really sure. So that's just my.
Beautiful. So I'm so glad that we have this rich diversity of thoughts and opinion in the room. That's exactly what why there's no shortage of writing on these sorts of topics, because there's lots of things to bring to it. I'm going to move on because we've already heard from 4 different folks. But thank you so much for giving it consideration and sharing with each other the richness that you have inside. So we've got a story now. Yeah.
As I said before, I'm going to ask you to help with the story. When I raise my hand, I want you all to say, Arab lover, traitor. Arab lover, traitor. Okay?
You want to practice once?
You want to practice once?
Traitor.
Oh.
Arab lover. Traitor.
Okay. Thank you. Maggie will start the story.
A woman named Hannah was walking through a marketplace in Jerusalem. Suddenly, this 40-year-old mother of 8 heard someone shouting, "Terrorists! Arab!" A young man ran past her and was tackled by a soldier right at her feet. Adnan Al-Afandi, aged 21, a young Muslim extremist, had stabbed a 13-year-old Jewish boy. The crowd closed in. Hannah felt something terrible was about to happen. Someone fired a shot. Without thinking, she threw herself atop the young Arab to protect him. The crowd was shocked. They spit on her, kicked her, cursed her, and called her Arab lover, traitor. And and worse. Hannah stayed put until the police took Al-Afandi into custody. In the weeks that followed, her actions were fiercely debated in Israel. She came from a community of Haredim, Jews called ultra-Orthodox. She further violated stereotypes about them and about women among them by agreeing to go on television with the mother of the boy who had been stabbed. On television, the mother screamed,
I am very angry at this woman. And she shouldn't have killed, she should have let the Arab right there be killed.
and said she would have preferred that the crowd had killed Al-Afandi right there in the market. Hannah just replied,
I gave him sanctuary as a human being, as a child of God, and now I must explain myself?
So ends our story. I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn 123, Spirit of Life. be seated. So, when I was a kid, going to the toy store was always both a special occasion, but also a pretty fraught occasion. I was an only child of a single mom, and she was trying to, cover the bases and get the bills paid and so on. And we would go to the store to pick up something in particular, or maybe even buy a gift for somebody else. And I would see these shelves and shelves and shelves of all these amazing, colorful toys that could all just be mine if my mom would just buy them for me. There were the action figures that had the holograms on their chests, and the ones that you could move their arms and legs and put them into all sorts of different positions as they fight each other or go on campaigns together or do all sorts of different things. And there were the huge Lego sets where you could get the really small ones or the big ones that look like castles. And there were just so many different possibilities and amazing things that if only my mom would just buy them for me, then I could play with them. That is what they're there for. That's what you're supposed to feel like when you go into a toy store. And that's what you're supposed to feel like when you go into the cereal aisle at the grocery store, where they conveniently put all the sugar cereals down towards the bottom and the healthier cereals up towards the top. So kids, like I was, and like I'm sure some of you were, might be like, Mom, Dad, please, can we just get this one? It's so good. Or I saw that advertisement on TV and it looks so amazing. But of course, we don't totally get to let that go when we become adults. When we go into Kohl's or a Target or a Meijer or any other place, there's still plenty of stuff that is beckoning to us. Like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if you got this? Or wouldn't it be nice if you got that? And the temptation isn't just because it would be great to get this really wonderful espresso maker, or, oh, this is the perfect kind of welcome mat that I could put in front of my front door. The temptation is also just the soothing aspect of welcoming something else under our control. I have this new thing that I own. I have the ability to procure things. I have some agency in my life. There's a soothing that we can get from it. A soothing of our dissatisfaction, a soothing of our alienation, a soothing of our loneliness. For some folks, the only way out of their dissatisfactions in life, or the most important way out of their dissatisfactions in life, is to try to be more obedient. I was confused, super confused, and frustrated for the longest time. There's a way that I understand why racism is a challenging thing to address. There's a way that I understand why sexism is a challenging thing to address. But when it comes to things like homophobia and heterosexism and so on, I start to become very confused of why is it so hard to just let somebody else be themselves while you can just be yourself. And there's a way that there's a part of me that finds that infuriating, that with all the other problems that we have to deal with in the world, that we still have to deal with that one too. But for a lot of folks, they need to be obedient in order to receive God's love. And so if they see a rule somewhere that seems like it's coming from God, one of the most important things is that they stay obedient to that rule. In Rebecca Parker's words, their understanding is that God's love includes rewards and punishments, because human beings are nothing more than selfish, willful children. We humans are motivated by what gratifies us, by what we want, not what God wants. So God disciplines us to teach us the right way to live, the way that accords with the divine will. And for those folks, obedience is bound up with love. And it's only by living with such a structure that they feel loved and protected and cared for. And so for them to agree with us that, for instance, LGBTQ folks are people of sacred worth whose civil rights need protection would mean abandoning their core experience of what it means to live within the embrace of God's love. But for us, to agree with them would mean to walk away from the best that we know love to be, the gift of gracious, transforming, unexpected invitation into a greater life through increased connection and engagement with others, especially those that are not welcomed by society. This is an example of differences in theological anthropology, our theological sense of the human. In Parker's words, religious liberals reject the view that human beings are by nature selfish sinners, unable to choose what is right, driven by their rebellious nature against God's rule, and in bondage to the needs and desires of their bodies and their hearts. Instead, religious liberals have taught that human beings are created in the image of God and possess sacred gifts that they must learn to use for good. And some of those sacred gifts are what 19th century Unitarian William Ellery Channing called powers of the soul, gifts like reason and feeling and imagination and language and memory and creativity and conscience and sexual intimacy and pleasure of all different kinds of varieties. While the Calvinists of Channing's day argued that people are totally depraved sinners from birth, the Unitarians claimed that there is no human action that could totally erase our divine origin. But even though our divine origin would always be true, they also understood that human dignity, human potential to manifest divinity in the flesh, was not automatic. It had to be cultivated and nurtured. You had to grow a soul. Channing insisted that the purpose of education was to call forth and direct all the powers of the soul. The powers of the soul were the image of God within us, and they would wither if they weren't nurtured or could be suppressed by social systems that denied humanity the full exercise of its powers. This is why 19th century Unitarian education trailblazer Horace Mann advocated for free public education so that all children could develop their divine nature. This is why 19th century Unitarian Elizabeth Peabody led a movement to establish kindergarten in which children's native goodness was to be respected and nurtured. This is why they opposed slavery and worked for abolition, because slavery forcibly suppressed and denied the capacity of human beings to unfold their God-given gifts. As Channing argued, what is the end and essence of life? It is to expand our faculties and affections. It is to grow, to gain by exercise new energy, new intellect, new love. It is to hope, to strive, to bring out what is within us. Slavery is thus at war with the true life of human nature. It's also why they work to include women in education and voting and professional life, so that women could exercise their full God-given human powers. Our 19th century religious ancestors taught that exploitation, prejudice, and abuse of human beings weren't just crimes against humanity. They were also crimes against God. And because of our divine nature, we were authorized to revolt against injustice. In Parker's words, throughout the history of liberal theological anthropology, there runs a clear theme. Love is not a vertical relationship of obedient submission to the divine order. It is, as the liberal theologian Walter Rauschenbusch wrote, we love and serve God when we love and serve our fellows. The powers of the soul enable connection and interaction with others. To be human is to be embedded in the intricate web of life. To be alive is to receive the world through all the channels of the senses, all the sensitive modes of feeling that are ours, and to respond with our own contribution. We give to life our touch, our word, our action, our embrace, our guidance, our acceptance, our censure, our blessing. All living is in community and in communion with others. Love is what happens in the vibrant interchange among living beings and life forms. It is the experience of being drawn to one another, of interacting with each other to create happiness and joy, to labor to care for life's daily needs, to give refreshment for the soul, How does this compare to how our society is set up right now? When you go to a Target or a Bed Bath & Beyond, what understanding do you get of what it is to be human? What understanding do you get of what it is to be right with God? What understanding do you get of what it means to be loved and to love? When the CEOs of any of those companies make business decisions, on what theological basis do they make those decisions? What it means to be human, what it means to be right with God, what it means to love and be loved. When the television or internet media companies sell advertising, on what theological basis do they make those decisions? What it means to be human, what it means to be right with God, what it means to love and be loved. When the lobbyists advocate for particular government policies and when the politicians adopt some version of those policies, on what theological basis do they make those decisions? What it means to be human, what it means to be right with God, what it means to love and be loved. Theologian John Cobb argues that the dominant view of human beings in U.S. culture, the theological anthropology of the marketplace, is that all humans are by nature self-serving pleasure seekers who desire life without limits and aren't prone to care for others or to meet mature obligations. Parker puts it this way: Homo economicus, the economic human of market capitalism, is self-interested, focused on immediate gratification of wants and needs, and unconcerned with what happens to others in the process of getting the needs met. At every turn, the market, the dominant religion of our day, tells us that our children that this is who we are, and this is who we should be. But this concept of the human being, in fact, diminishes the fullness of who humans are and can be. And it tragically alienates human beings from the whole web of life on which all life depends. Economic practices based on regarding human beings as selfish and self-gratifying transfer wealth into the hands of an elite few. The marketplace teaches us to be self-interested and can make us captive to the goals and values that don't help our communities and relationships thrive. In the process, our relationships with each other grow less and less valuable. And so does our relationship with the good and beautiful earth. Our entire economic house is built on a foundation of human depravity. So what would it look like if we had an economic system with a different theological anthropology? One that regards human beings as generous, as capable, as connected to one another and the earth. We human beings are not isolated, separate creatures. That's not the nature of reality. That's not how it works. Psychologically, that can be true. We can feel alone. And socially and culturally, we certainly get that message. That's what we're taught. We're taught to function as if we were separate and isolated from each other, as if human nature was, at base, self-interested. But that's not the deeper truth of it. The deeper truth is that we are interconnected. That none of us, absolutely none of us, exists in solitude. I invite you into a very brief practice of just putting your hand on your belly and just feeling whatever the shape of it is, whatever judgments you might have about its shape, just let those fall away. And just feel your own self there, and that there's some different curves going in some different directions, and right at the middle there's a part where it goes in, maybe a little bit for some folks, maybe a little bit less for others, a little bit more for others. That right there how you were connected to the rest of the world at the very beginning. In the most intimate of ways, through your belly button. Something that we all still carry, is still a part of us, still a reminder of where we came from and what is actually true. You're welcome to take your hand away or leave it there as you so choose. In Parker's words, we are born from the bodies of others. We cannot exist without breathing and eating, nor do we exist for ourselves alone. We cannot exist in this way that we've been functioning. At the very least, we are interested in the future of our own self. Our own future self as an other for whom we must exercise care. If we do not care for this other, life will not go on. And our own future self cannot be excised, cannot be cut off from the intricate web of life. Caring for multiple others, for all of life ultimately, is integral to our existence. To care for life is to offer hospitality to other beings. And this can be a powerful source of healing in our world. Hospitality can look lots of different ways, but at its utmost, being hospitable can mean going above and beyond what was done to ourselves. UU minister Patrick O'Neill has a story from his own childhood that John Buren's recounts like this. Patrick was in first grade, and one day in the winter, some older boys pushed him face first into a snowbank. And outraged at the indignity, he sat crying on the front stoop of his house. And a neighbor, Mrs. Bouteillon, had seen everything. She came out, brushed the snow off his clothes, took him to her kitchen table, and she served him hot cocoa. And she told him in her French accent, which I won't do for you all, but she told him in her French accent, "Patrick, you are angry at those boys for what they did to you. And it is natural for you to feel that way. But now, you must let it go. This day has other things to give you." And Patrick never forgot what she said. And years later, after both Mrs. Bouteillon and her husband had died, he told his mother about it. And that sounds just like her, his mom said. "You know, don't you, that the Bouteillons were both survivors of the Nazi concentration camp?" Heeding Jesus' words on the Sermon of the Mount, the people in the Christian community of Koinonia Farm, a very different part of the U.S. in southern Georgia than where Patrick O'Neill was from, in the early 1950s, they had a daily practice of forgiveness, just like it calls for in the Sermon on the Mount. Before evening prayers, members were encouraged to ask forgiveness of anyone with whom they had any semblance of tension throughout the day. This practice was extremely beneficial to their community, especially when they started being terrorized by the Ku Klux Klan during civil rights. In 2006, after a gunman had entered a one-room schoolhouse and killed 5 young girls before killing himself, the response of the Amish parents of those kids astonished many people when they attended the funeral of the man who had done that and even prayed for him. This sort of radical hospitality to others is not at all what we find in our public marketplace. Buren's tells a story of doing some Christmas shopping and carrying lots of shopping bags and feeling really tired and muttering to himself, really frustrated with all the Christmas traffic and all these people in line, and reflecting on how even gift giving now gets tainted by these sneaky forms of competition and gratifying one's ego. And then he saw a teenage boy just bobbing along, listening to an iPad, nothing in hand, wearing a t-shirt with a slogan on it that said, "Only you can prevent narcissism." In the middle of the mall, here was the meaning of the whole place summed up. What matters is you, what you feel, what you want, and above all, what you deserve. We live in a culture that seems shot through with entitlement. As Buren's argues, when we allow ourselves to fall under the sway of the culture of narcissistic self-involvement and entitlement, it saps the empathy and empathy and generosity from our very souls. This isn't just about ideology, but rather a spirituality and theology that moves toward a welcome table for all of God's children, one aimed at reducing the violence and anger in the world by living more simply so that others may simply live, aimed at having a community in which all children are safe and have enough to eat. May we see that we don't really deserve anything. Everything we receive in this life is a gift to be shared, a gift to be shared around the welcome table with our fellow hungry humans. And this is where we get not just into theological anthropology, but also another category of theology, pneumatology, which we're not going to go in depth on, theology of the Spirit that moves us. In order to grow beyond highly individualistic, narcissistic spirituality of contemporary culture, we need to not just provide human beings with sanctuary, we need to provide a sanctuary for their spirits, for capacities that we might not yet be able to access ourselves, that we need to learn to grow into, to tap into, to practice cultivating in our lives. The story this morning of Hannah protecting the young man was an indication of someone who had cultivated that capacity, demonstrating the spirit that is capable of truly offering sanctuary to one another. And so my suggestion to you, my invitation to you over this coming week is to reflect on the questions that we talked about earlier today. They're in your order of service. Maybe do some journaling, maybe talk about them with each other, and see what new answers might come up for you. And I'll close with a couple of more comments. Parker writes, "Love is more than obedience to divine authority or submission to the needs of others. There needs to be a home for a different kind of love, one that celebrates erotic intimacy and happiness, that fosters play and pleasure among human beings, that respects all people as created in the image of God and as possessing divine gifts of freedom and grace that enable us to love each other. There needs to be a home built on understanding that all life is interdependent, whose foundation is faithful care, whose threshold is open-hearted welcome, whose kitchen serves any in need, and where love can lie down in peace and take joy. This kind of love can provide us the nourishment we need to resist the excesses and injustices of our economy. It can bring about more justice and sustainability for the planet. So may our souls grow in reason and feeling and imagination and language and memory and certainty and conscience. May our souls be lightened and delighted. May our passions be aroused for action. Whereas empty religion involves building up a defensive shell against the rest of the world, may we find the true joy that does not ignore despair, but that can move a soul from great melancholy to praise. May we have faith that we creatures were and are loved more than we can say or sing, and bring that energy into the world with us. May that ever be so.
Each week, we welcome the Spirit of life and share our resources. This week is where Venezuelan refugee family. There's an insert that you could see how we're helping them. The cup goes to the family, the basket goes to the church. for your presence, your prayers. Thank you. Another way, besides our belly buttons, that we connect to each other is through serving, nurturing, cultivating, and love. We do things together in love. I have a few announcements. We celebrated 150th of Unitarianism in this building a few weeks ago. The milestone didn't happen on its own. We stand on the shoulders of the generations who came before us. The board has afforded us an opportunity to help plan and dream about our goals for the years to come and the plans we step to take to get there. Your presence is requested at the congregational retreat on October 19th here at church at 9:30 a.m. till 2. There'll be breakfast, which will include parlor donuts and fruit, and lunch will be provided. Doors open at 9. If you have any questions, see Sandy or any board member. We will be having a trunk or treat on Sunday, October 20th, after coffee hour. We need volunteers to decorate the trunk to hand out candy. We also need volunteers for games or crafts. If you would like to donate, we could use candy, items like bubbles, tattoos, rings, not real tattoos, you know, those stickers. Our coloring books. We'd also like donations for Halloween-themed basket raffle for any children who bring an item for the Humane Society to enter. So if you're interested in any of all of this, please contact Ashley, Roz, Marianne, or Michelle. I don't know if Michelle's here. You can sign up to volunteer and bring the donations anytime in the parish hall today. We will be having an intergenerational first hour at 10 a.m. on Sunday, October 6th, to celebrate the Feast of St. Francis. Sandy will be leading. Please see Sandy for any questions. All ages are invited. Our rummage sale is September 27th and 28th. You could start bringing in rummage anytime now. And next week, after our service, we'll be needing help to start bringing things up, and all the following week and the following Saturday to clean it up. It's a whole long week. And help for coffee hour and greetings each Sunday is needed. There's a place to sign up in the parish hall. And like I said, the rummage sale is Friday, December 27th, and Sunday, did I say December? September 27th, and Saturday, September 28th. Please open your hymnals to 131, Love Will Guide Us. Please stand, if able and willing. We go out into the highways and byways. Give the people something of your new vision. You may possess a small light, but uncover it, let it shine. Use it in order to bring more light and understanding into the hearts of men and women. Give them not hell, but hope and courage. Preach the kindness and everlasting love of God. I invite you now to join me in reciting the blue words on the screen to accompany me in extinguishing the chalice. May we continue to carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you.